take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. And you turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. 'Cause you take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. 'Cause I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Say, I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for
I walk amongst the shadows, you wipe my tears away. I felt the pain of heartbreak, I've seen the brighter days. I prayed prayers to heaven from my lowest place. I've held the blessings, God, you give and take away. No matter what I have, your grace is enough. No matter where I am, I'm standing in your love. On the mountains I will blow my life to the ones who sent me there. In the valley I will lift my eyes to the one who sees me there. When I'm standing on the mountain, I didn't get there on my own. When I'm walking through the valley and I know I'm not alone. You're the God of hills and valleys, hills and valleys, God of the hills and valleys. I am not alone. You guys know this, I wish y'all to sing this along to me. Y'all can put your hands together. I watch my dreams get good. In you I hope again. No matter what, oh, I'm safe inside your hand. On the mountains I will blow my life to the ones who sent me there. In the valley I will lift my eyes to the one who sees me there. When I'm standing on the mountain, I don't get there on my own. When I'm walking through the valley and I know I'm not alone. You're the God of hills and valleys, the hills and valleys, God of the hills and valleys. I am not alone.
Father, you give and take away every joy and every pain. Through it all, you will remain over and
lift my eyes. On the mountains I will bow my life to the ones who set me there. In the valley I will lift my eyes to the one who sees me there. When I'm standing on the mountain I don't get there on my own. When I'm walking through the valley, no, I am not alone. You're the God who heals in valleys, He heals in valleys, God of the hills and valleys. I am not alone. You're the God who heals in valleys, heals in valleys, of the hills and valleys. I am not alone. Blessed be your name. Oh, and I am not alone.
Grandeur earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of His voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calm and broken for my weak God. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well with me. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can't see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be thrown into the midst of the sea. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well. It is well. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. Waves and wind still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. Waves and wind is well with me. You may be seated.
How do you define how God feels about you? How do you define the truth? What do you fill your blank with? The truth is, God doesn't care. The truth is, God is mad at me. God seems distant. God isn't real. The truth is, there has to be more to life. But despite how you feel, despite your past, the truth is, God loves you. God does care. God forgives you. God is here. God is real. The truth is, there is more to life.
Good morning. Welcome to Encounter Church. My name is Chris Causey, and I'm so glad that you are here today. We're kicking off a brand new series, one that I'm super excited about, that I think, honestly, for the next 5 weeks, can radically transform your life. And that sounds really bold, and that sounds really kind of firm, but it's, I think, because I've personally walked through some of the journey that over the next 5 weeks we want to take you on, and the way that it's transformed and uprooted some of the things in my own personal life. And I think it's often one of those things that we're not even aware that's there. This idea of our tendency to fill in the blank and to kind of project and kind of push on other people, and to push on ourselves and to God. So what I want to do today, because this I think is such a big conversation that we want to have over the next 5 weeks, that I want to kind of give you a broad introduction, because over the next 5 weeks we're going to hit this in 3 different areas of our lives. And so I'm going to stir up more than I'm going to settle today. Okay, that's my disclaimer. I am really here to provoke and cause you to ask questions, not to give you answers. That's what the next 4 weeks will do. All right, so that's kind of your commercial. This is where I want to begin. It's a beautiful French town known as Arles. Probably butchered it, but you know what? None of you are from there, and I'm not either, and so we'll just roll with it, okay? It is a gorgeous town that dates back to the Roman period. It's famous. There's a huge old Roman amphitheater there. But this is the town square, so very old, picturesque. You Google this town square, you're going to see a lot of pictures. It's a tourist kind of a space that a lot of tourists like to go, just because it does date back to that Roman era of the Roman Empire. But what I want to tell you about is this tendency or tradition in French culture, this idea that if you are an individual who meets someone who's elderly, who's living in a house or an apartment that doesn't have any living heirs, their spouse has passed away, there's this kind of spoken an agreement. It's not law, but it's kind of typically held up within French culture this way, where you can essentially say, hey, for the rest of your life, I'm going to give you a payment monthly, and you continue to live in your house or your apartment, and then when you die, the legal rights of that place become mine. So it's kind of this traditional way of win-win, right? So here's this individual who gets to live in their house, collect income from living in that house, and then when they pass away, the other individual gets to acquire their house, typically way, way, way below market rate. And this is exactly what played out with an apartment in the center of this community. Her name was Jean-Marie Clement. You can see here, she did this every single day. And in 1967, her notary noticed, as a 90-year-old, a really good opportunity. Her husband had passed away, her only daughter was dead, And so he entered into that agreement with Jean-Marie. And he agreed to pay her $500 every single month. And when she died, her apartment in a very kind of enviable spot in the town would become his. And surely, at 90 years old, smoking every single day, he thought, man, I'm about to get this cheaper than anyone has ever gotten it. But by 1995, he'd have paid over $200,000 as he passed away. Because of this traditional French kind of agreement, it's legally kind of contractually when they enter into it with each other. The idea is that if you, the one who is paying, dies, then your next of kin picks up the bill too. So Jean-Marie Clement continues to live in her apartment while this notary's wife is now beginning to pay her. He will continue to pay this woman. This is actually a snapshot, just because this sounds so absurd. I want to show you documentation. This is an archived image from the New York Times in 1997, or 1995, showing a 120-year-old lease on life outlists the apartment heir. That's the poor sucker who entered in that deal with that woman. And she finally died at the ripe old age, conquering and becoming the longest living human at that point, documented. She died August 4th, 1997, 122 years and 164 days old. When he entered into that deal with her in 1967, he thought her days were numbered, and they were. They were just numbered up to August 4th, 1997. And while he thought, surely, this is the best bet ever, what he ultimately did was he filled in a blank. He thought he knew how this thing would play out. And while this story is absurd and in some ways hilarious, except if you're the family who paid all that money, because in the end, they ended up paying more than 2 times the value of that apartment. Okay? So they got a really, really bad deal on that. So even when she passed away, it wasn't like they were like, we can't even make money on this apartment. That family forever lost money on what they purchased. But I think it's a great story because it frames the danger of filling in the blank, of jumping to a conclusion, making an assumption like you know. And the whole kind of series, we want to have this 5-week conversation around our tendency and the danger that it represents, because oftentimes our tendency to fill in the blank, to jump to conclusions, oftentimes does lead to consequences that cost us and our loved ones. In fact, there's a verse I want to give you that's the kind of the central theme of the series. It comes from Proverbs, and it's a very simple statement, but it's one of those that is meant to provoke us to reflect. It's meant to be a mirror. It's found in Proverbs 14, verse 8. It says, the wisdom of the prudent. And the prudent is another word for the wise. So it's literally the wisdom of the wise. What's at the kind of the core of what the wise do that's different than what most of us do is that they give thought to their ways. Not just how they travel, not just where they're going from point A to B, but the entirety of their life. They reflect on how they live, why they do what they do. But the folly of fools, or the foolishness of the fools is deception. It's this simple statement, one that you could read over very quickly and say, oh, yeah, I got that. But this is one of those passages that's meant to cause us to slow down, because here's the beauty of the trap. If you read it fast, you've already been trapped. If you go through it and you think, oh, the wisdom of the wise is to give thought to their ways, but the fool, okay, yeah, I got that. And then you move on. But you didn't pause long enough to say, do I give thought to my ways? So it's actually a really clever proverb in the original language and what Solomon delivered to his children. Because these things were meant to be portable statements that you went through the course of your day thinking about as you went through. And this is actually really a foundational I think, practice that all of us should acquire in our lives. All of us should be leaning into this thing. I mean, credit card companies do it. I mean, that is what a credit report is. It is a institutional giving thought to your ways. How have you paid your bills in the past? How do you operate financially with what you make? How much debt are you in? Your employer did this. They asked you questions about where you'd worked before. What experience did you have? When you went to rent an apartment at some point, that they wanted to know, where have you been? Where have you stayed before? And how did you leave it? When a reference check is called, this is what they're doing. Institutionally, organizationally, is to give thought to your ways. We do this with products that we buy on Amazon, but for most of us, we never think about doing it in the course of personal life. We will scrutinize the people who work for us more than we will our own lives. And what I want to do today is give you a word picture and start this conversation, stir up some things, not settle them. Because what I would like to show you is that I think visually we are all walking through life with one of these, with some baggage. Now, oftentimes we'll say this about others. We'll say, man, they got some baggage. Yeah, you watch out with her. She's got some baggage. You need to know that he comes with some baggage. But the reality is that all of us come with some baggage. All of us are walking around. Now, I'm not saying that some of us, we got this one, we got the medium, we got the large. We're one of those people, have you ever been to the airport? There's some of us who walk through like this, and then there's some who walk through and they're pushing the cart, and it's stacked up high, and you're like, where in the world are they going, and what are they taking? I'm like, are you relocating your entire house via luggage? Because that's amazing. Right? But we all have this. We all have baggage. And what Solomon is saying is that if we're going to be wise people, then we've got to give thought to what it is that we pull with us along the way. Not just give thought to what the person walking with us has, because that's important too, but to give thought to what you have. Because most of us can easily point out the stuff in other people's lives, but we miss what we have in our own. Because it's just, we take it for granted. We just assume this is what traveling looks like. You got it in there, this is normal. When in reality, it may not be. So I want to give you 3 broad categories. As we say, give thought to our ways, and this will be present throughout the entire series. This is kind of 3 boxes I want you to think about of what might be inside of your bags. Because ultimately, we want to give thought to them. We want to understand them so that we can remove them, so that we can hinder. I mean, this is a perfect example. For some of you in this room, you instantly recognized what kind of bag this was when I brought this out. For others of you, you may just think it's any luggage, but this is not. This is, we were going to have a 3rd child, but we gave that up so we could have these bags, okay? This is called an away luggage. And away is not cheap. But what happened was I had so many times where I was running through airports, pulling luggage that wheels had snapped off. There was one time it got jammed and I was dragging it, and I had another big one and I was dragging it. I'm pretty sure I ripped muscles in my arm. I was sweating profusely trying to get to where I was going. And it's like by the time I got there, you could look and the wheel had literally ground itself off. And I was like, no more. I'm not doing cheap luggage. We will just not have a 3rd child, and we will buy real, adult luggage that for the rest of our life will work. When I may not die with anything, but I will die with this luggage, and this will be in my will. I will say to Henry, I leave my carry-on and my medium. To Ella, I leave my large. You like clothes. You'll need it, right? That'll be what I give them, is this. And it's phenomenal. If you're looking for luggage, this is a wonderful brand, okay? But for most of us, it kind of starts to get heavy in the course of life, and we drag it into the next relationship. We're convinced, oh man, that relationship didn't work out, it was their fault, and we never even think about why our arm's tired. Because we drug it into that one. And guess what? If the problem really was just them, then the next relationship, you won't have that issue again. But if the problem is you and what's in your baggage, then guess what you're taking into that next relationship? Guess what you're taking into parenting that second child? Guess what you're taking into that next job? Your baggage. And I think there's three types of baggage. There's three types of kind of luggage that can be inside of this, articles. The first is assumptions. Because assumptions, as Henry Winkler said, are the termites of relationships. Man, they erode great relationships. These assumptions are tricky, right? You may have grown up, just you inherited them. You caught them. They were just part of the water that you swam in your family. Or they came out of that first heartbreak or that first interaction where you realized you were a little different and somebody picked on you, and for the rest of your life that stuck, that grabbed hold. And you kind of put it in the bag without ever thinking about it, and it just started carrying it with you. That for some of us, that we never think about these assumptions because they're in there and we carry them around, but we have this low grade, this low value of ourselves, that we're unwanted, that we're unappreciated, that we're not desirable, that we're not attractive, that we're not a good catch, that we're not smart enough, or that people are always out to get us. People can't be trusted because you had a few people in your life who just really hurt you, and you said, you know what? I'm never going to let anyone do that again to me. I can't trust people. And we put that in there, and we construct our lives around that truth, and we just keep carrying it. And these assumptions, they accumulate. And the problem with an assumption is you never think about it. It's just there. There is a whole industry that has risen up where people make stupid amounts of money to help other people break past their assumptions. I mean, in the world of business, there are, recently I came across this mastermind small group. And it's like, do you make $1 million in your business? Do you want to make 10 million or 100 million? We want to help you break through the mental barriers that are holding you back for $100,000 a year. And because I'm funny, I think, I called them. And it was like, sell me on what you offer. I'm like, convince me that $100,000 that I don't have can make me $100 million. Because I know how you're making your money. But I want to know how you're going to make me money. And this guy, man, he had so much conviction. And it was like people's assumptions are holding them back. They're the barriers. They're getting in the way. We bring breakthrough. And if you're just to peruse some of the top books right now, you'll see Mind Shift or Mindset or Reset Your Mindset. I mean, it's like all about those assumptions that hold us back. And there's some truth to that. Because most of us aren't aware they're there. And oftentimes, it's when you start to get around people who don't live with those assumptions that you start to notice that you do. When you start to see it play out differently, that you start to say, maybe there's a different way. But assumptions aren't the only thing. It can be attitudes, right? This tendency, and these things build off of each other. Maybe growing up, you kind of, like the world's a harsh place, it's dog eat dog, and so your attitude in every kind of meeting, every kind of work, every kind of relationship that you've ever had, you come in and you're the aggressor. You're going to get yours. You're looking out for number one. That's your bent. That's your baggage. And you hear that sometimes. Oftentimes, you get people's attitudes when you do reference checks or when you learn someone's reputation. They're like, oh yeah, they're really smart, but they're a jerk. Or they've got some ego. Like the attitudes are those things that just kind of operate a little bit on the surface. And they're what people start to kind of smell in our lives if they spend enough time with us. They notice it, the jealousy. They're like, oh man, they can produce some good stuff, but if you ever cross them, they're not going to forgive you. They're going to hold on to that, and you're going to hear that in every single meeting. They're going to recall the past. They're going to play that tape for you again. They're just not going to let it go. So you just don't ever make a mistake with them, and you'll be fine. You're like, oh, okay, that's great pressure. But these attitudes, they're present. And they're there, and they lurk. And while I wish I could sit down and kind of unbox all your baggage, and help you figure it out, the reality is if we were able to do that physically, what we'd find is that there is a lot of different diverse types of attitudes because there's a lot of different diverse experiences. And that all of us, based on our personality, based on where you grew up, based on when you grew up and how you grew up, and all of those filters shape and kind of mold what we end up kind of grabbing hold of. There's some things that don't bother you, that bothers the person sitting beside you, because it bumps up against this assumption or this attitude that's underneath have you ever been in something, they're always constantly offended. They're the person sitting on the airplane, and this, just recently, the guy who was yelling because of the baby crying. And I don't know if you saw that clip, but it'll bless you. And the steward goes up to the guy and he's like, sir, can you calm down? You're screaming. You're really, really disturbing everyone's flight. And he's like, that baby's screaming too. And you're like, bro, you're 45. That baby's 4.5 months. Yeah. Step it up. But it's like people who can get just the smallest thing will set them off if they feel like someone's encroaching in their space or disrupting. And it has nothing to do with that baby crying. It has everything to do with the baggage that he brought on that plane. Oftentimes the things that irritate you, bother you, that doesn't seem to land the same way with other people is oftentimes about what you have in this. And what you're carrying around. And the last one is our actions. And this is where it pops up and kind of comes to fruit in kind of the boldest areas of our lives. Maybe it's that tendency for us to have the last word in every argument. We can't let it go. We got to have the last word. Even if it's a dumb one, we're going to have the last one. You're like, yeah, walk off now. Maybe it's our passive aggressiveness. Maybe it's our just the way we never hit the actual conflict that's present in our life. But it's there. It shows up. Maybe it's the way that we try to parent, the way that we blow up, the way we respond. That these actions oftentimes aren't about the moment that we're reacting to. There are moments previous in life that we stuck in our back and that we went out into the world with. The reason I said this was so personal to me is that I started to become aware of this when I was probably 18 to 20. I started realizing, man, the stuff that I internalized when I was younger is still there. You want to think, right, when you get to adulthood, that, I'm going to like to wake up early because adults were always up before me, that they always seemed like they had life figured out. So it's like, man, I think something happens when you turn 18. You register for selective service, you register to vote, and all of a sudden, things just click. You just know, you understand, and then you get to 18, and it's the most depressing experience, and then you shift, you're like, it's 21. That's when it's going to happen. It's when I graduate and I get a job. Then it'll finally happen. It's 25 when I can rent a car without being penalized. That's when it's really going to happen. Then it's 30 because every 30-year-old I knew, they were so adult-ish. And then you get to 30 and then you get to 40 and you're like, holy moly, is it ever going to happen? You're like, I'm still my teenage version with just a lot less hair and a lot more weight. Like, but me then is still me now. And this naive notion that the past is behind us drives some of the decisions that we make. We think if we just leave that behind, if we move to a different state, if we take that different job, then I'm leaving that there. But the past is not behind you. The past is in you. And it goes everywhere you go. That's why I love this analogy. To give thought to your ways. Because it's always, always there. And it can be hard for us. But let's just be real. Like, aren't you tired of carrying that? I have these moments where I'll leave a group of people who operate with just a whole different set. Like, it's obvious they don't have this bag that I do. They have a whole set of different things, but it's not this stuff. And I'll walk out and I'm angry because I'm like, I'm smarter than them. I could do that. Like, they're stupid. That sounds harsh, but I'm thinking it. Like, they don't have it together. I'm so much more together, and yet they're so much further down the road. And it's like, what's my problem? And it's like, oh, because they wake up every day thinking that people want them in the room. And I don't. Like can I just, let me be vulnerable for a second, okay? So just recently, I had a backstage pass to a Grammy Award-winning musician, okay? I don't talk about it. I don't post it on social media because it's my life, right? This is not your deal. So I was there, and I was backstage, and I'm like, this is incredible. And it showed up, and it was a surprise because it was a friend of a friend. They're like, hey, I have a surprise for you. And I get there, and it's like, boom. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, this is amazing. And I'm like, what is, and they're like, you can go anywhere in the venue you want to go. I was like, you mean I can walk backstage? They're like, yeah, totally. I was like, how do I do it? And they're like, well, just go to the security guard. They're going to see your badge, and you just walk in. I was like, okay. So I get to the security guard, and I'm like, and I walk, they're like, hey. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this thing. Then I walk to their room where the food is spread out, and they're like, you know, and it's catered, and they've got their, like, road crew, and I'm just sitting in the room. And I have another friend who had a similar experience. And like his social media, like he's got pictures with them and he's hanging out. And I walk in the room and literally I stand on the wall the entire time. Because something in me, like I stepped in the room and I'm like, this is the big deal. Like, this is real. And my first thought was, why am I even in here? Like, I shouldn't be in this room. Nobody wants me in this room. Like, I'm not, like, all that junk gets stirred up. And I literally, I'm the only idiot in the world who gets a backstage pass to a major concert and then is like, I don't feel like I'm wanted. I'm going to leave now. And then I got self-conscious because the badge was there. So I like pulled it off and hid it so that no one would notice. And I went back to my seat. I could have stood on the stage in the back watching the entire concert, and I didn't. I sat in my seat. The reason why? Because I let an assumption and an attitude hold me back. I could have walked up, I could have gotten selfies, I could have gotten pictures, I could have asked the questions that were in my Evernote that I've always wanted to ask this person. But I didn't. I didn't do any of it. Because it's just me, and the assumption from me was I'm not wanted in here. Because I think that about all the rooms I end up in. I mean, just being, like, I'm being vulnerable. Most of us, we would never say that stuff out loud. But it shapes how we live every single day. That we're afraid the mask is going to fall off and someone's going to see it. And so we don't step into situations. We're so afraid of what we've done in our past that we won't step out in faith and do something new. We let all of this stuff hold us back. And don't you want to go on a trip where this isn't needed anymore? Some of us keep ending up in cold places, and it's because all we've packed is cold stuff. And I'm just saying, I'd rather be sitting on the beach, sipping my little drink with the little umbrella in it, listening to the waves come in. Instead of ending up in the cold places where I'm projecting on everyone in that room that I'm not wanted in there, that I have no value to bring. We hold ourselves back because of what we hold on to in our hands every single day. Your marriage could be so amazing. Your parenting could be rock star status. You could look differently in the job that you have and how you lead if you let go of what you had. But I think the starting point for oftentimes for most of us is we've got to become aware. And while I can't unpack it all right now, I can give you a question that will start to unlock it for some of you if you're willing to ask this question. Because the danger is the deception and that we don't know it's there. Right? The foolishness of fools is deception. And I don't have any bags. What are you talking about? I don't have to get the last word. You just did it. No, I didn't. You just did it again. No, I didn't. I don't have to have the last word. That's it. I'm done. You know, and it's like, you just did it again. And it's deception. I'm not insecure. Now, people just out to get me. People don't see the greatness in me. Whatever we say to ourselves, but we project and we carry. And this is a phenomenal question to help us break through the self-deception of actually what's in our hands. And it's to ask people who love you, who care about you, what's it like to be on the other side of me? Hey, what do you see when you see me? What's it like to argue with me? What's it like to disagree with me? What's it like to be around me in my insecurity? What's it like to be on the other side of me? But you can't ask the question if you're not open to hearing the answer. So don't go out on some fishing expedition if you think the only thing somebody's going to say is, gosh, man, I don't even know. I mean, awesome. I mean, Disney World. And you're like, yeah, Disney World, like all the fun rides. And they're like, no, all the smelly, sweaty people angry standing in line. That's the part of Disney World I was referring to when I said Disney World. But you hear what you want to hear. So you got to be open to what the response is going to be. If not, you're like, so it was like Transparency Day. So one of my biggest fears as a speaker, especially now in the day in like the wireless mic, is that I would go to the bathroom before it starts, because we stream live, and then we're up here. And I do a mic check right before you come in the room, and then I usually go to the restroom. And I have this like deep fear, like, I mean, it's like OCD at this point, where I'm like checking my mic, unplugging it, because this idea of like going to the bathroom and it just broadcasting. I mean, that's terrifying. And the reason it's terrifying is because I wouldn't know it's happening. I'm in there thinking I can make all kinds of sounds because I'm free, and I'm not. And this proverb, I think, is the scary thing about it is the fact that we can walk with this deception. So do not ask this question unless you actually want the answer. And here's why it matters. Here's why this passage is so terrifying. So in 1999, Mars Climate Orbiter was launched. And it was a big deal for humans and for NASA, because this was going to be the first time that the climate on another planet was monitored. In the same way that you can pull up your weather app and see weather data from here, like wherever you are on planet Earth, you can see it. It was going to be the first time that you could do that for a whole other different planet. Like, that's pretty cool and profound. So you could check the weather on Mars in case you needed to, right? And so they blast off. It takes about 9 months to travel from Earth to Mars. It arrives. It's in its final few minutes where it's deploying and is approaching the point in the atmosphere and the gravity where it can actually start to find its orbit. And then in a moment, it disappeared. Stopped sending a signal because it had crashed. So naturally, when your $125 million toy breaks, you have a few questions. So they started to ask questions. And eventually what they discovered was it was a breakdown between Lockheed Martin and the engineers who built it and the command center that was operating it. See, Lockheed Martin had built the orbiter to receive and to operate with kind of metric units, newtons of force, kilotons, and all this stuff. And NASA's command center was sending signals in pounds of thrust. So when the command center communicated to the orbiter, hey, fire this so that you don't go too far into Mars' atmosphere, because they wanted to hover around 50. What had actually happened was it was not enough of power and ended up going into 37 miles into kind of from the, and that atmosphere began to slow it down. The gravity pulled it straight in and it boomed. I think the reason these bags matter, the reason it's worth doing the hard work of the question of what is in the bags that I'm carrying around and projecting on others, that I'm carrying around, projecting on myself, and that I'm carrying around and projecting on God, is because there are real life consequences to this abstract thought that there are things that you carry around with you. And that the reason the wise walk and give thought to their ways is because they recognize it can get in the way of how they live their life. And this has been the reason that some of us have walked out of our first marriage heartbroken and walked into a second relationship and saw some of the same storyline play out. It's the reason that some of us look back on our first child and are wondering what happened in the midst of our second child because we took this into that relationship. With our finances, with our faith, that this has real life consequences. And it's not just the orbiter that ends up being destroyed, it's the people around you who deal with the shrapnel of that impact too. That's why the wisdom of the prudent or the wise is to give thought to their ways. But the foolishness of the fools is deception. See, we're all filling in the blank. And until you become aware of what you fill in there, you'll keep doing it until there is no more there to put in there. And that's why I want to invite you back over the next 4 weeks, because like I said, this was a series meant to disturb, to provoke, to stir, to make you ask questions, not to give you answers. And over the next 4 weeks, that's what we'll begin to push into. Discovering specifically, personally, for you, for me, how do I fill in the blanks in others, in relationships, and how do I fill in the blank with myself, and how do I fill in the blank with God? Because it matters what we put in there. To the point that the life that you will live, the faith that you will experience, the freedom that you will walk in, is determined by what you write in. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the grace that you give us that is just simply unmerited. Thank you for the hope of Christianity that goes beyond the bags that we carry. Thank you that there are promises from you, Father. Promises of peace and freedom and joy and life and of hope. And may you help us to walk in that. I pray, Holy Spirit, that you would inside of us stir clarity, insight, discernment, wisdom about what it is that we carry. That what is in the bags that we walk around with, that we might find freedom from those things. Thank you that you're good. Thank you that you're kind. Thank you that you care. And it's in your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen. So here's how I kind of want to end today. Tonight, we're going to have a worship communion night. If you've never been, I want to encourage you to show up. It's profound, and it's our first one. We've done it a long time. And the heart of worship and communion night really is about reconnecting with God. The team is phenomenal. Clearly, it's going to be good music and like good opportunity to connect with others. But ultimately, what I want for you in this, what we want for you in this, is just to be able to reconnect with the Father and to see who God is, and to not just sing songs about Jesus' love, but to actually walk away being like, man, I think I bumped up against him tonight. And that may sound a little different and weird, but we've all been in places and spaces where we kind of got caught up and it was bigger than just us, and kind of leave with this sense of transcendence, of bigness. And all those moments are just rumors of ultimately the God who created them. If you've ever stood at the Grand Canyon, it's not just a hole. It does something inside of your soul. And these aren't just songs. These are just pathways. These are words to help you encounter him. Because in moments in like this series over this month, that when we start to become aware in the bags, like I could share my struggles. I can be vulnerable with you because your view of me doesn't define me. My insecurities don't define me. He does. What you'll discover in this series is that there is a freedom when you hand the pen that you've been writing in the blanks with to him. And he begins to write your story. He begins to write his truth. It does something inside of you. And that one of the songs that we're going to sing tonight is how we're going to wrap up today. It's this song that I've been listening to for about 6 months, 7 months now. And it's a simple song, but its simplicity is the beauty. It's just this reminder that we can run to the Father, that we can run to God. That the way that when my kids get hurt, the first thing I hear after the cry is the feet of them trying to find us. Because if they can get in our arms, it's better. And that God is that Father who is open arms, his open heart. He loves us. That he's not the one to define us by the bags that we carry around, but he's defined us by the freedom that he purchased for us on the cross. He's like, hey, I want to take your bags and put them in all the same place, right? Heaven has a holding place for our bags. It's called the empty tomb. That's where your bags and my bags go. It's like, let me just store them right in here because you don't need these anymore. Because when I walked out of that grave, I was also giving you the freedom to walk away from the bags that you carry, from the things that you hold on to, that no longer have to have a hold on you. Like, that's the good news. When Jesus comes to make you new, that's not just a pretty statement. It's truth about you. That your hands don't have to hurt anymore. Your arms don't have to be sore anymore. You don't have to lug that. You can drop it and run to the Father to experience in his embrace and his grace. So, this is a song that may be new for you, but the love that it sings about is not. It's a love that is deep and wide and has been sung and declared for thousands and thousands of years. And so I hope that as you stand, as we sing and respond with this song, that you would find God meets you in the midst of it, but I hope that you come back tonight and experience that freshness again. So I want to invite you to stand as the team leads us, closes us out with this powerful song called Run to the Father.
too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you. I run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, oh, the price for my heart. I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and say, oh, oh, again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 my heart has been in your sight long before my first breath, running into your arms is running to life from death. And I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out. Just as I am, you pull me in, and I know I need you. Now sing, I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again. I'll run to the Father, fall into grace. No reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again. Say, oh, 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 and again and again and again. Oh, 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 and again.
I told you, it's such a good song. I mean, it's just this heart of who God is and the intimacy and the fact that God would want your attention and my attention and would want us to run to him. It's just, it's amazing and it's humbling and it's true. And that's our hope for tonight, is that in the midst of whatever you have going on in your life, no midst of kind of the hills or the valleys. If you're exhausted from the bags that you carry, or you're kind of starting to walk in new, fresh freedom, we think that tonight will just be a powerful night of encounter for you. And so we're super excited. You can register. We've got a few more childcare spots, so if you have kids and you want to come, we do have childcare through 5th grade. It's free, but there are limitations because of just safety and quality parameters that we have. So encounterchurch.com/WC. Worship communion, not water closet. Somebody's like, hey, that's a water closet. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't call it that. So I guess that's why it didn't cross my mind. But yes, so WC, encounterchurch.com/WC. If you don't have kids, or your kids are older than 5th grade, then you don't have to register to show up, but you can still look at that website. It'll have the start times. It's about 75 minutes long. It'll have some of the playlist of the songs that we're going to be singing tonight, so you can kind of go ahead and kind of get into, like, if you ever played sports growing up, you put your headphones in, you'd be like, yeah, getting this same thing. You can just get ready for tonight, because I think God's got some work that he wants to do in us, and some love that he wants to shower over us. So we look forward to seeing you back here tonight for that, and if not, to see you back next week as we continue this conversation around filling in the blanks. God bless you. Have a phenomenal rest of the day.